AI tools like ChatGPT are amazing tools to help you speed up your content creation and your marketing. Or are they? Today on the podcast, I have my friend Lisa Fraley. She is a legal coach who is going to walk us through some of the pros and cons of using AI and how you need to be thinking about it so that you don't get sued and you stay legally protected. Hey there, I'm Tracy Matthews. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer of Flourish and Thrive Academy and the author of The Desired Brand Effect, Stand Out in a Saturated Market with a Timeless Jewelry Brand. And I help jewelry business owners launch, grow, and scale successful multiple six, and seven-figure business using my methodology. And I love talking about these topics because we always love being on the edge of innovation and helping you do things in a faster, better way. But we want to make sure that you are legally protected. So Lisa Fraley is a legal coach. She's been an attorney for a long time. She specializes in trademarks and copyrights. And she's going to be talking a little bit more about some of the pros and cons of using AI to help you run your business, in particular with ChatGPT and a couple of other AI tools. So before we dive into this episode today, I just would like to remind you that if you want a little bit more legal love and jewelry business coaching in your life, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and make sure that you like this video if you enjoy the content today. All right, let's dive in to this episode with Lisa Fraley. So I'm very excited to have Lisa Fraley, our legal coach, back on the Thrive by Design podcast. Lisa, it's so great to have you here.
Tracy, thank you for having me back. I'm so happy to be with you again.
I'm excited. We were chatting for so long in the pre-interview. I'm like, we got to get this started. I got back-to-back interviews today. We got to go. Which is so
it's
funny.
Good to catch up though.
I'm like, I need to drive to Sedona. We need to hang out. And it's awesome that you live here now because I feel like we have so much to talk about always.
We do. And I really would love to have you over. So we will plan that for sure.
Okay, awesome. So first and foremost, give everyone a brief background on your history and tell them what you do.
So I'm a legal coach and attorney for all kinds of online business owners and creatives. And I started out really working in a big giant law firm, just like you're supposed to do when you get out of law school. And of course, I got burned out like many people do in corporate America. And I went into the world of coaching. I became a life coach through Coach U and a health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and found my way into this online space like maybe 11 years ago. And what happened was I was actually practicing as a coach, and I had so many friends, Tracy, and coaches who were like, listen, we don't like lawyers. We don't like the law. And we want you to help us understand what we need to do and not do to be able to protect ourselves. And so I hesitated at first, but then after working with my own coach, I actually decided to pull sort of the love and care I have as a coach together, along with all of my legal knowledge, to help people know how to protect themselves in this space, especially selling jewelry online or selling products online or selling courses online or whatever it is that they're doing, so that people know how to stay safe and keep themselves legally protected and not be afraid of anything legal. So I just try to make it easy and approachable and actually loving, believe it or not, so that people will take steps to protect their business and their brand and their website and their products and everything.
You also wrote a book. Because it had just released when you spoke at our event a couple years ago in New York City. Tell us about that.
Yes, I did. My book is called Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul. And while you may be scratching your head going, why in the world would she say that they're good for your soul? I sort of take a different approach to the law and align legal steps with the chakras, because I believe that, yes, we all need to take the legal practical steps that we think of, like trademarks and website protections and contracts and things like that. But when you do take legal steps, you create not only legal boundaries, but you also shift your own energy and how you show up. And you actually create better energetic boundaries and better clarity. And you plug money leaks and you plug energy leaks. And I think that my personal philosophy is that also helps to identify who's going to show up in your world, because the way your energy presents itself is also what gets reflected back to you often. So I do take a different approach to the law. I believe the law is spiritual too. And that's why I named my book Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul.
I love that. Okay, so I wanted to have you on the show again. We've talked about a lot of different things to my community, But I
Yeah.
wanted to have you on this time because I saw you posting some videos on Instagram about people getting sued by using ChatGPT to write copy and use it for their business. So I wanted to kind of just explore what's going on with this. So I just wanted to open this up, like give us a
Yeah.
little background on like why this is maybe dangerous.
Okay. So as with everything, I often talk about there's an and, right? So Chat GPT, I happen to be a huge fan of at the moment. I think it's really helpful in your business. It can provide ideas, it can provide information, it can help you write newsletters, it can help you write social media posts, all the things, Tracy, right? Help you come up with titles and content, and it's actually very cool.
Hmm.
And there are some drawbacks to it, as you're mentioning. So, where it gets a little tricky with AI is that right now the law is really undefined around it, right? It's so
Hmm.
new. People have only been using it for the past couple of years. Only like 14% of the population or something has been using ChatGPT. So, we're all on the cutting edge as usual. And so, it can get a little dicey around things like copyright and plagiarism, which are the two biggest areas that seem to be showing up right now. So there have been several different types of lawsuits. Most recently, though, the one that I think people find really interesting is that there have been a couple of class action lawsuits that were just filed really recently, which means a whole giant group of people come together and form a lawsuit. And it's also formed on behalf of other people, actually. But what they're saying is that because ChatGPT and other generative AI programs actually sort of like pull and swipe content when they are gathering
Hmm.
information to respond to your chat GPT prompt. They kind of go through and pull information from everywhere they can possibly find on the internet. And so there's an argument being made that they're actually violating people's copyright rights or copying their images or their designs or their images of their jewelry or their
Hmm.
images of their content without permission. And so there's a big class action lawsuit now to figure out if that's legal or not. And the copyright issue is so tricky because when people copyright work or copyright their designs or their original content and put it out into the world and share it on social media, we do want people to see it, but we don't want people to take it, right?
Hmm.
So with ChatGPT, we're still trying to figure out the lines between what is considered something that you're sort of putting out into the world to be shared and what is something that you're putting out into the world that should not be taken or used without your permission.
Okay, so that's interesting because you were using, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, this might be wrong. I think one of the case studies was some guy who was using ChatGPT to maybe write a speech, and
Yeah,
it was like word for word someone else's speech.
yeah. So that's the issue of plagiarism. So let's talk about both the issues. So
Okay,
plagiarism
plagiarism
is
and copyright. I get those confused sometimes.
no, it's okay. It's totally understandable. They're a little confusing. So plagiarism is actually when you are taking someone else's content and representing that it's yours,
Hmm.
right? So like you're going out and doing research or gathering information online and you copy and paste a paragraph because you like the way it looks and you're writing content for your blog post, let's say, your social media post, and you go back later and you kind of forget to change it. This happens all
Hmm.
the time, right, Tracy? People do it innocently. They don't mean to. Sometimes they just forget and they don't change this inspiring piece of work that they've pulled over to take a look at to inspire them. And they use it as their own, which is then claiming it as yours. And that's just not legal. That's like stealing someone's content and saying that it's yours. So that's false. It's a falsehood. You're representing something as yours, which isn't yours. That's plagiarism. And we'll all remember that going back from high school. Remember when they were like,
Hmm.
don't plagiarize on your paper, when don't copy the book information from the textbook and put it on your paper and say you wrote the paper. That's what we're talking about with plagiarism. The other piece of it is copyright. So what is the deal with the copyright protection? So, as artists and creatives and designers out in the world, you all know that, first of all, you rule the world, according to Tracy, as we know. But besides that, I couldn't resist. Besides that, you are creating unique original works of art. And copyright law under the US government allows you to protect that unique creative original
Hmm.
piece of art or writing or music, or it goes beyond art, but it's all kinds of things. But it has to be unique and original and yours. And so there's a couple issues that come up with copyright because first, if you're doing a chat GPT prompt and you're getting back information, sometimes ChatGPT may be pulling from other people's sources or even citing sources sometimes in your response that you don't have permission to use. So when you use what ChatGPT just spits out as to you exactly as is, then you could be violating someone else's copyright without even knowing it, or you may know it. So be really careful there. That's the first piece. The second issue with copyright is that, again, we talked about our own items. What if we're putting things out into the world that we don't want other people to get pulled up in their chat GPT response and then use without your permission? So it kind of works both ways. We don't want to use other people's work, and we don't want people to use our work without permission. So that's why right now the Copyright Office is in the process actually of trying to identify what you can and can't use in terms of copywriting. So there was a case that came up a while ago that said that a gal actually who was an author of comic books, Tracy, used Midjourney, which is an image generating AI program, to create some images for her comic book. And she copyrighted the whole comic book with the US Copyright Office, which is usually how you do that. So it's protecting the text and it's protecting the images. Well, she actually made the mistake of going on to social media and telling people she used Midjourney to make her images. And somehow the US Copyright Office discovered this and said that she could not, they actually granted a copyright for the whole comic book, including the text and images. And then they revoked the copyright for the images because they said that at the moment, the AI program was the one essentially that created the images. They weren't her original works of art. The AI program was the one who created the image. And she said, but wait a minute, I'm the one that told Midjourney what to put in this image. I'm the one that gave the directions. I said, please create an image that looks like this. And then Midjourney just responded to my prompt. And the Copyright Office at the moment said, no, 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 that's not enough yet. You did not have enough, and this is the line, significant human authorship in the creation of the image. So now, of course, the issue is, well, what the heck is significant human authorship, right? I mean, versus insignificant human authorship. So they're trying to figure that out right now. And a recent case that came up was with the Grammys, actually. So not the Copyright Office, but the Grammys organization has said now that singers who sing a song with AI lyrics in them can still be eligible for a Grammy. But the songwriter who writes a song cannot use AI to create the song because, again, it's the same issue with the image we just talked about in Midjourney, right? If the AI program writes the song and then the songwriter claims it as theirs or partially theirs, again, the Copyright Office would say that's not enough significant human authorship. You did not create that with enough input or intention behind it. So you can't get a Grammy for that. But if you sing the song, you can, because you didn't write the song. You're just singing the song. Isn't it fascinating? I think it's so interesting.
Fascinating. Like, I'm just like, how do you even keep track of all this stuff? Like, that's the big thing. And
I'm trying, believe me, it changes every day, but we're doing our best as it evolves.
I know. And it's hard. Like I did an episode about plagiarism and jewelry, but it was really copyright infringement and jewelry, like people copying. The person who pitched me the episode used the term plagiarism. And I'm like,
oh, interesting.
I have to like think through like actually what all this means. But at the same time, I think this is fascinating. So, okay. So as a legal coach, as someone who is like, studying all these cases and staying abreast of everything that's happening, like, number one, how can someone use a tool like ChatGPT for their business in a way that helps them speed up their maybe content making and their output, but is not like infringement on plagiarism or copyright?
Great question. Okay, so from the legal perspective, what we would say as lawyers is that one, first of all, when you get content back from ChatGPT, do not use it exactly as is. This is the most important, like mic drop, like this is the most important thing. Do not use it exactly as is. It's tempting. I know it's tempting, but please do not do that. Okay. Do not do that because you would be hard pressed to ever prove that you had an original hand in creating that. Okay. So take what ChatGPT gives you and edit it and revise it. Think of it as a first draft or even
Mm.
just inspiration, and take concepts or phrases or sentences, and then tweak them and change them and shift them and make them their own. This is no different, Tracy, that when we all go and take courses or we go to programs or conferences or events and we learn information there and we take it back to our own business and we make it our own, right?
Mhm.
Or you maybe see someone else's jewelry and you're so inspired by that, but you go back to your own business and you make it your own. You don't do exactly what they did. You
Mhm.
don't copy what they did, but you take that and you say, oh, that's so fascinating. I've
Well,
never
hopefully
thought
you
that
don't.
you can.
Hopefully most
Well,
people
that's the
don't.
idea, right? You may say, oh, that's so cool. I'd like to do something similar to that, but I'm going to do it my own way. And
Mhm.
Tracy, you're so good at teaching everyone, and through your own experience with your own expertise in business about the unique, gorgeous jewelry that you make, that everyone can do their own
Of
creations. And that's
100%.
what we want to do with ChatGPT too.
A circle is a circle is a circle. It's your interpretation of the circle that makes it your own.
Correct. Well, and to that point, this is really fascinating too, because people will say, well, Lisa, like an idea is an idea is an idea. Like what we all have the same ideas. And I say, but that's what's interesting under the law is that the law protects your unique original expression of that idea, right? So
Mhm.
like you may be talking about how the moon has four quarters, let's say, like, right, the four quarters of the
Mhm.
moon, but we all know that the moon has four quarters or that the sun rises every day. But how you write about the four quarters of the moon or the sun rising every day is what gets to be protected as uniquely yours. That's the same thing with jewelry. Circle is a circle is a circle, but
Yeah.
that's right.
I love that. So we talked a little bit about like editing and all of those things to make sure that you're not just taking something that it spits out and using it.
Yes.
Now, is there anything else that the listeners need to be thinking about in order to protect themselves when they're using AI tools?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, we talked before about not only just don't use the content exactly as it is, but make sure that if there's any works, I mentioned this briefly, but if there are any works in it where they're actually citing a source, just be really careful about that. You might want to do some of your own research and work around that as well. And then the idea around making it your own is that you always want to be looking for creating unique and original content. And you also want to ask ChatGPT to give you unique and original content as well.
Mm.
And then the next legal protection I would mention is actually trademarking and copyrighting your own work. Okay.
Mm.
So, trademark is what's used for a brand name, like a marketing or branding name, a name of your business, a name of your collection, a name of your program or course or
Yep.
product or whatever it is you're doing, or a logo or a tagline. It's like a short little marketing phrase or image. Copyright is for the unique whole work, the entire original work of art or the body of work that you're doing. Those are an easy way to distinguish them. But when you trademark your brand or your logo or you copyright your own work, that does give you additional legal protection that you would not have if you don't do those steps. So those are important things that you can do to protect your own brand and have the ability to go after people with greater emphasis if they violate your work.
You know, it's really interesting. I was thinking about this when you were talking about changing things because, you know, when you're typing in a Google Doc nowadays, it suggests words that you should
It
type
does,
in.
doesn't it?
Yeah. And Jason's
That's true.
daughters have this thing in high school where everything is plagiarism checked
Yes, that's
because
right.
of what's happening right now, right?
That's right.
So, Jason was saying to one of his daughters the other day, like if if you're writing in a Google Doc and it's suggesting words to you, don't use those because it might come up in the plagiarism checker. So, what do you think about this? And is that true? Because I was just typing something recently and I was like, oh, it's suggesting words. I'm like, that's
I
easy.
think
Like,
it depends on what the purpose is for. Like if you're writing an email to someone, you can probably use the words that Google suggests,
yeah.
right? But if you're actually creating something that will be yours, your marketing language, your
Hmm.
social media post, your blog post, your newsletter, whatever it is that you're doing or sharing or material to go with a collection or whatever it is, then I would look at what Google says and like occasionally maybe you could use what they suggest, but in general, they're usually suggesting phrases that are really common.
Yeah,
And most, what I've learned from you, Tracy, of course, is most artists are unique. They want to be unique. They want their work to stand out. They don't want to
exactly.
be like everyone else. They don't want to look like everything else. And so just take the extra couple seconds and think of another way to say that. Use thesaurus. I mean, I'm going to sound like a geeky lawyer now, but like use a thesaurus online. Use
Yeah.
the suggested words. Like there's so many different ways now. It's so easy to find another word in like 2 seconds so that you're not copying what they're giving you. So use all the tools we have available online and just make it a little bit different and uniquely yours.
I love that. So I think the next question I wanted to ask you is like, what happens? Like, let's say you have your intentions are good, you feel like you've done all your due diligence, and maybe you get a little bit lazy or something like that, and you get in trouble or in a sticky situation. Like, how do you handle that? Like, if someone is reaching out to you saying, like, you are plagiarizing my work or you're infringing on my copyright, because
Yes,
it does happen all the time. I mean, we had to send a cease and desist letter to someone who's using our name for a coaching
there you
program.
go. That's it. So I always start from the place, like my whole philosophy, besides bringing spirituality into the law, I also bring a lot of love into law. Like my whole brand is based around legal love because I do think that law can be so harsh and scary and overwhelming and not enjoyable. And so what I always encourage people to do first is come from a place of kindness because you can always get more legally harsh, but once you're harsh, it's really hard to go back, right?
Mm,
So start from the place of kindness. So, first of all, if someone sends you a letter to say, hey, you're infringing on my work, please stop using that, you get a cease and desist letter, then really stop. And even though it'll probably make you emotional and nervous and scared and like I didn't mean to take their work or I'm not trying to copy their work, or sometimes people get a little defensive, like, that's
mhm.
my work. Well, who are they to think they can challenge me? But start from a place of love and kindness and just really look at it from their perspective to say, oh, do they really think I copied them? Does my work really look like their work? And if you find that it is close or you made a mistake, or like you said, you got lazy that day, then just write back and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I really promise I did not mean to take your work. I would never want to take your work. I did not mean to make my work look like your work. I will shift what I'm doing and not do that. So that's the first piece of advice. If you really then feel that they're incorrect, then it makes sense to talk to a lawyer and who understands intellectual property law like me or someone else so that you can find out what your options are and you can find out how to respond in a way, first of all, that's less expensive than going to the extremes. And then second of all, just go step by step so you could build a case if you needed to be able to defend your work.
Exactly. That's great advice. I think I told you this on another interview. We may have been talking about it a couple of years ago, but I was sent a cease and desist letter for a design that I made for the Sundance catalog when I was, I don't know, maybe in my fifth year of my jewelry company. This was way back in the day, probably 20 years ago. I was horrified. I called Sundance
Of
Catalog right
course.
away. I'm like, I just got this cease and desist. I don't want you to think that I was, copying anyone's work. And the buyer on the other end is like, this happens all the time. People think that like their ring that's super basic is like something that was stolen. And
Exactly.
I learned that. And this is kind of like where our philosophy came about this circle is a circle is a circle thing, because everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people are inspired by similar things. A lot of people are on a
Right.
spiritual journey. You know, how many Reiki infused crystal jewelry
Right.
designers are there out there? I mean, you have so many in Sedona. You can
Right.
basically like walk 2 steps and find another
Totally.
Reiki infused crystal jewelry seller, which is amazing. Like, I'm all about the Reiki infused crystals. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
send
yeah.
them
Of
to me,
course.
like the whole thing.
Of course.
And at the end of the day, it's like there's a difference between blatantly copying someone and being inspired by something similar.
Totally.
And so, in this particular case, in my experience, like it was a very popular shape at the time because a lot of people were traveling to India and it was inspired by my travels to India. And this person thought I was ripping them off, but I'm like, then you go to market and you look at everything else that's out there and everyone is doing their version of that. So
Right.
nothing, I just want to say nothing ever came of it. It wasn't like actually a big deal, but I was freaked. Like my heart, like the second I opened that, like I went into panic mode. My heart was
Of
racing. I was
course.
sweating. I was like, am I going to jail? Like my name is at stake, like all these things.
Of
But
course.
it is just part of the process. And, I got sent by like 4 or 5 people. Someone's like, they're using the same name, Tracy, as your business. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And, maybe nothing will happen and they'll keep using it, but we do have a copyright on it. So we're going to see. And I know that there's different levels of copyright. I'm learning this, of where certain types of copyrights and trademarks don't necessarily mean that someone has to stop using the name. Is that
That's
true?
right. Usually in trademarking, you're talking about
Okay.
trademarking, I think primarily, Tracy, but that's right. It depends on the type of trademark that someone's been granted. Trademarking is an area
It's
that I think people think looks really easy because the
it's
trademark
not.
form itself is not super complicated, but the legality behind it is super complicated and really nuanced. Like I've done over 70 successful trademarks for my clients, and I have a full-time trademark attorney on my team who's been doing intellectual property law for 30 years.
Mhm.
What does that tell you, right? Like
Yeah.
I've been a lawyer for 30 years myself, but I haven't been specifically an intellectual property attorney.
Yeah.
But for the past 10 years, I've been doing intellectual property law. And I also have someone on my team. So I always tell people, please don't do trademark and copyright on your
Yeah.
own unless you at least talk to a lawyer first, because it is very nuanced. The other thing I'll say too, Tracy, is that what people also don't realize is that when it comes to people challenging you using their designs, or if you think they're using your design, intellectual property law always comes back to who created it first.
Mhm.
Well, actually, I should say, who can prove they created it first, because it's the original work that was created by someone using it longer that actually usually wins the case. Not
Mhm.
always, but usually wins the case, because copyright and trademark law, particularly trademark law, was designed to prevent people from sort of taking and capitalizing and marketing on behalf of other people's goodwill that they've created in their brand and their brand identity and their brand equity, and using it in their business subsequently. So if someone created a business first and has created this amazing brand, and someone else comes along and copies it, that's not legal, because they're
Mhm.
piggybacking on the hard work
Yeah.
that you did first to create your brand. So
Exactly.
if you created it first, you can often prove that, at least that you could possibly coexist, or sometimes, of course, often that you
Yeah.
would win. It just depends. So keep records of when you create things and
Mhm.
start things, and you keep those in your business records.
We just went through this with one of the trademarks that I've been trying to get. We had to work with the company to get a coexistence agreement because
Yes,
there was something
exactly.
very close, and
Yes,
we
exactly.
originally got denied, and I was like shocked because we did all the research, and you know I already have a book about it. Like, I'm just like, what am I
Right.
going to do? It's like the whole thing. So I don't know, it's very, very tricky. It's not that
It
easy.
is. It's very tricky too. I've also worked with a client to be able to get a coexistence agreement too. And it is possible to do that if your brands are differentiated enough that most people really aren't going to confuse the two together. But it often depends on the perspective of the trademark examiner, who's kind of like a judge,
Mhm.
just for people to understand the role of the trademark examiner, that they kind of decide. Now they base it on the law, but they have discretion like a judge does to rule either direction. So sometimes they won't allow for a coexistence agreement, even though you think they should, but sometimes they will. Just
That
depends on
is
each case.
that's is so frustrating.
Oh, I know. I believe
Even if
me,
both
I
party
understand.
agrees, both parties agree.
Yeah, and if both parties agree, usually they let that go. Usually they'll let it proceed because they know that there's not going to be objection, but there are also potential parties in the future who could disagree too. So they have to make sure that
Mm,
they're still protecting the interests of the consumer in the marketplace, which is really what they're there to do, is to prevent two brands from being significantly confused, or from people confusing one brand for the other. That's why they do the work that they do.
okay, interesting. I feel like we've talked about this so many times, but I learned so much again today. So thank you
Well,
for
I'm
being
so
here.
glad. That's why I do what I do, is to help people learn what to do so they can protect themselves and their brands and their work, and not have to stress and worry about being unprotected, because you feel vulnerable when you're unprotected.
Mhm.
And that's the last thing we want. We want people to feel safe and secure and confident knowing that they have legal protections for the work that they do.
Awesome. Well, is there any final words of advice that you wanna share with people before we go?
I think the only thing I would say is that right now, where we are in this moment, using AI can be really, really helpful for your business. And just be thoughtful when you use it.
Hmm.
Make sure, just to wrap up, that you are changing the content to make it originally yours, that you're looking for citations in anything AI spits out you to make sure that you would have permission to use it. Just be very protective of your own work. Take steps to trademark your own work, copyright your own work. Be smart. And yes, it's worth the investment to do that. A lot of people say, oh no, it's a lot of money. Why would I trademark? I don't want to. But it is worth having lawyers help you do this to do it properly. That's the last thing I'll say about that. But I'm always happy to help. And there are plenty of lawyers out there who are happy to help as well. But you work really hard to do what you do and to create what you create. And I just want you to have it be safe and protected.
Awesome. And I highly endorse Lisa if you're looking to have trademarks done. She's helped me with many, many different things in my business. So
Thank
thank you,
you,
Lisa.
Tracy.
Where can everyone find you?
Thank you. You can find me at lisafraley.com or on Instagram at Lisa_Fraley.
Awesome. Thank you so much, honey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the show today. This is Tracy Matthews signing off. Until next time. If you haven't done so yet, make sure that you pick up my best-selling book, The Desire Brand Effect: Stand Out in a Saturated Market with a Timeless Jewelry Brand. It's available now on Audible and Amazon. Thanks so much. Ciao for now.